Hello, everybody. I am here today to talk about something that is very close to my heart and very important with people going through cancer treatment, radiotherapy. And just that word in some people makes people feel a little bit scared. So I have the great opportunity to talk to someone who knows a bit more about it than I do, Harry Wallace. And we're going to answer some of your questions and reassure you. So this is what this is all about. So we can actually give you a few answers and hopefully you don't worry so much about radiotherapy if you have it scheduled. So hello, Harry, how are you today?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Good, good, good. Would you like to tell people a little bit about what you've done in the past and why I'm talking to you about this? Let people know what your expertise is.
Of course, thank you. I qualified as a radiographer back in 2013. I did the Post Graduate Diploma at London South Bank University, which was an accelerated course. And during that time, I actually worked as a student radiographer at the Maidstone and Tunbridge Wells NHS Trust, and they offered me a job there when I qualified. Sadly, that job didn't last as long as I was hoping it to. I was only put on a temporary contract on the proviso that it'd be made permanent as soon as one was available, but one wasn't available in that time. So I sadly had to leave the trust. But it's kind of the thing that never really leaves you. And having the discussions since you and I have met, it's brought back a lot of very fond memories and a lot of camaraderie amongst the radiotherapy team. So it's an absolute delight to be able to talk about radiotherapy with you today.
Thank you so much. And it's lovely that you said fond memories because that suggests to people that it's not as scary as they think it is. You know, if you worked with a team and you did all that studying and everything, you haven't got that fear. And you must have come across that with people, that people are coming in and they are scared because it is a little bit unknown, isn't it? And I always say to people, ask lots of questions, but we don't always do we of our professional team. We don't always get the time. We don't feel that sometimes we think they're silly questions, don't we? So, and I know myself, the more I understood about everything, the less I was worried. So again, that's why we're trying to do this, isn't it? So thank you so much for doing this, and as I say, to reassure everyone. So I've got a few questions from people specifically, but I think if we can start generally with a little bit about what is radiotherapy, who has it and why, maybe perhaps a little brief outline of that.
Okay, super. So radiotherapy is a type of cancer treatment using very sort of, in layman's terms, high-powered X-rays called photons. You can use other types as well. You can have protons and electrons, but most commonly is photons. So it's basically a very targeted treatment that can be a standalone treatment for your cancer, or it can be used in conjunction with chemotherapy, surgery, at the beginning of your treatment pathway, during, at the same time, or at the end, depending on the type of cancer you have, how severe it is, and what basically what your team think is the best course of action for you.
Yeah. That is great. And just to say, we do know that radiotherapy is used for other things than cancer treatment, but we are talking specifically, aren't we, about cancer treatment today. So we know that it's used for other things. It's quite amazing, how much it is used, isn't it? And how successful it can be in treatment. I think that is something that I didn't realize anyway. I had no idea. So I think one of the other things that people always say is like, am I going to be radioactive? Am I going to have this put in me and I'm going to be like glowing in the dark kind of thing? Can you reassure people what happens there, how our body reacts to it and what happens with it?
Yeah, of course. So there's a very, very intense and detailed plan that is made for every single patient at the beginning of their treatment. And there's what's called like the PTV, which is the planned target volume, which is either where the tumor is or was. And that is the area that gets the majority of the radiation every single time. But as soon as the machine is turned off or cut off, the radiation literally disappears into the ether within seconds. So, as a general rule, if the machine stops making noises and you hear radiographers coming back into the room, that's a sign there's absolutely no radiation in the room whatsoever. So, you are not radioactive.
It's just one of those things, isn't it? People don't know they've got to keep away from children and whatever. So that's good to know that it's something that is so specific in the area, but it doesn't stay in you and you're not radioactive for a period of time. So that's
Not with external beam radiotherapy, no.
brilliant. That is good to know. But also, I think you've sort of hinted a couple of times about how much preparation goes into this, how every person that's coming for radiotherapy has a team of people sort of looking at their specifics. It's unique and it is thought out very well, you know, exactly what that person needs and what they're going to get. And that again is really reassuring, isn't it? To think, you know, a whole team of people have planned this. They know what they're doing. They've looked at you specifically, where you're at in your treatment plan. I mean, my radiotherapy came, I was still having chemotherapy and it came after surgery. So that, for a lot of people, that's the common time, isn't it? But for some people, like you say, they have it standalone. So, but rest ensured that you are going to be treated as an individual. And that means that this whole lovely team of people has done the planning and they work it out for you specifically, because as we say with it all, everyone is so different, aren't they? So I love that you're sort of, the way you're talking, it really does say that, doesn't it? So something else that people like to know, because if they know when they're going to have their radiotherapy and everything, that we have, what do I call it? I call it the measuring up. But there's an official term. You go in first of all, don't you, to have your prep. And then actually, and one of the things with breast cancer, and we do use this for other areas, but with breast cancer, you do have to have your arms above your head, don't you? Which, if you've had surgery like I have, you have to work up to that so that you can lie there with your arms above your head. You need to be in that position, don't you? But with other cancers, obviously, people are positioned in different ways. I know someone I know has had radiotherapy on their eye, and they had something to keep their head secure. You know, so it's keeping yourself in that still place, isn't it? Which again can be a bit scary, you know, got to be still, but it's easier than you think. We can be still, can't we? So can you explain a little bit about what that prep session is, that what I call the measuring up? Can you sort of say a little
Yeah,
bit?
of course. I used to call it the planning scan. So
Yeah.
you'd come in for your appointment and you'd have a CT scan in a machine that had typically a wider hole than a normal CT scanner to allow for the equipment that you're positioned in to go through the scanner as well. And like you say, that the position that you're put in is the position that you have to mimic throughout your treatment. So if you've got 4 weeks of treatment and you decide, oh, I'm not actually that comfy, but I'm not going to say anything because I don't want to be a nuisance, then you're expected to be in that position for the next 4 weeks when you come to start your treatment. You know, really do speak up. It's not a burden. If it takes an extra 5 minutes to get you comfortable before your treatment, that's, you know, potentially half an hour saved when you go to do your treatment properly. It is daunting having your arms up above your head and then your tunic pulled down so that we can see the treatment area, and it does make people feel tense. And 9 times out of 10, when you say, right, are you relaxed, and a patient would say, yep, I'm relaxed, but then when you come back into the room, you've noticed they've sunk 2 inches because they were holding their breath and they only relaxed when we left the room. But you know, there are tolerances and there's things we can do to accommodate that, so don't panic if that's what happens to you, but just, you know, like you suggest to everyone, just do your breathing, be confident, speak your mind. If there's something you're not sure about, ask questions, and that will make it easier when you come back doing your treatment.
Yeah, yeah, I love that, because it is about, you know, we do what we're told, don't we? And we think we can't interrupt the professionals and we can't say anything, you know. But that is the time, that session, that prep is the time, isn't it, to go, actually, can I wiggle a bit? Can I do this? Can I do that? And it's great that you've said that, so people will know to do that, because they might not otherwise, mightn't they? You know, to know, I want to be comfortable. You know, this is you getting set up, and it is very important that you do, like you say, mimic exactly that position when you're going through your radiotherapy for real. So the setup is so important. And I think, remembering back, you know, I was a bit daunted by it. I didn't ask as many questions as I would have done. I was just doing what I was told and whatever. But it's quite nice to know that you can go, oh, actually, can I move a little bit? No, I'm not really comfortable. And wiggle, you know, get yourself really comfortable, because you are going to be there for a period of time, aren't you, when you're going through your radiotherapy treatment. And as I'm saying that, you know, typically, I think when I was actually going through the fractions, they call them, don't they? Not sessions, I call it sessions, but it's fractions. It seemed so quick. So you're not actually having it for very long, are you? Is there an average time that the fractions actually last, that you're actually there in when you're having the radiotherapy?
The actual treatment, the time the beam is on, is
Mm,
ever so small and insignificant
mm.
compared to, the setup, getting you on the bed, getting you off the bed. Sometimes the machine will stay still, sometimes it will move around you slightly. And yeah, it's seconds compared to your actual appointment time.
Yeah, yeah. So that's again something to know. That setup appointment can seem quite long-winded and it's necessary, but when you're actually going for the radiotherapy, you're in and out, aren't you? So quick, isn't it? And that being said, so I do get people say to me, "Oh, you've got to drive all the way there, and you've got to get there and do what you've got to do, and you're in and out." It seems unbelievable sometimes, doesn't it? You've had maybe a long journey and all that sort of anticipation, and you're in and out and it's done, isn't it? But that is the very nature of it, isn't it? And it's normally done one day after another, isn't it? So you need to go backwards and forwards. So
Yeah, and I think that's really important to kind of get your head around, because it can seem like a pain in the backside if you've got to drive 45 minutes,
mm,
struggle to find somewhere to park, walk to the department, and then it does only seem like, oh, what's the point if I miss one? But those fractions are calculated to suit your treatment plan and your type of cancer.
mm,
And if you miss one, depending on your circumstances, yes, you can bolt another one on the end because circumstances happen, but it's made, to have a bit of a sort of like catalytic effect on you and your body, so you won't necessarily feel like you're having radiotherapy at the start, but the effects will continue for a good couple of weeks after your treatment ends. And you have the 5 days a week, typically Monday to Friday, and then you have your break for the weekend to allow your body to rest and recover before then going back. So there is rhyme or reason for it. You can't just say, well, can't I just have three across the day and then I don't have to come back tomorrow? It
yeah,
doesn't work
yeah.
like that.
Yes, I did think that. I thought, oh my goodness, you've got to get all that journey there for that very quick time. But you've just explained wonderfully why it's like that, and that's what we have to do. And it's a little bit like you just got to give yourself up to it, haven't you? You've just got to do it. And it does take time out of your day. It can take the whole day if you've got a long journey. And I think, something to bring in when you've just said that about, sometimes driving yourself there, parking and everything. One of the things that I say is, like, there are questions. Can you drive yourself to it? Can you actually exercise? Can you work? Um, I'm going to say yes, you can to all those things. Correct me if I'm wrong, because people might be working while they're doing this. They're trying to fit it in their day, and people, like you say, driving themselves and everything. I personally, for all of my treatment, I relied on my friends and my family to drive me, because that took that hassle away. I didn't have to worry about parking. I didn't have to worry about being late. I didn't have to worry about traffic. That was a luxury that I actually gave myself. So if you can do that, that's really nice. Also, when you've got someone in the car with you, driving you, because that's really lovely, you've got a distraction, haven't you? It takes some of the worry away. So that's a little tip from me. If you can be driven, then do, because it really saves a lot. But you can drive yourself, can't you? So
You can, yeah,
yeah,
and you can exercise and
yeah,
carry on working. I would just say listen to your body, because everyone reacts in different ways. Some people might be having more severe side effects than others.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
if you're trying to work, but you're struggling with tiredness or you're uncomfortable, then be kind to yourself. And presumably by the time you've got to radiotherapy, your employers know what's happening, or
Yeah,
people
yeah.
around you in your business know what's
Mm,
happening. So just speak up. If you need a lift that day, tell someone, I need a
yeah,
lift today, I'm not
yeah,
feeling it, or I
yeah.
can't come into work for the rest of the week, I need to recover from my
Mm,
treatment.
mm.
And yeah, like, listen to your body and don't be afraid to speak
Yeah,
up.
yeah. I think that's the thing, because everyone's different. Some people have said they didn't feel a thing, they've sailed through it and everything. I personally didn't feel anything from the radiotherapy. I did, like you say, a few weeks afterwards, which was really strange, I thought, although I was told that it would probably happen. And I was probably quite tired, because I hadn't long had my surgery and I was still going through chemotherapy. So I might have been tired for other reasons. Some people just sail through it and don't feel any effects at all, don't they? So that, and again, sometimes your skin can be a bit sore, can't it, if you're having a lot of fractions? So bear that in mind if you're driving yourself. It might be uncomfortable, mightn't it? So that's something I think to be careful. But a lot of people don't feel anything on their skin, do they? So
No,
that
the
is
actual
something.
the actual treatment itself is pain free as well. You
Mm.
don't sort of like feel a burning
No,
sensation when
please.
the machine's on or anything like that. It is literally, yeah, for breast ladies, because the target area is just below the skin, it means that the skin surface can get quite sore and a bit like severe sunburn.
Yeah.
Whereas other tumours or tumour beds, which are slightly more deep-seated, like in the pelvis, they'll get less of a skin reaction, but they
Yeah.
might get more reactions that might affect the bowel or the bladder.
Yeah, that's a really good point, isn't it? Where it is makes a difference, doesn't it? So, but it is like you say, listen to your body, give yourself, a break if you need to. If you need a rest, if you think you're going to go into work and you don't feel like it one day, you're allowed to do that, aren't you? You're allowed to be a bit flexible. So, I think that's really important for people to recognise as well. But again, not to scare anyone. A lot of people sail through it; they don't feel anything at all. And that's lovely. The amount of fractions you have varies, doesn't it? Because it's individual.
Yes.
So I personally had, I think it was 5. And like you say, I had a little weekend break and everything. So it took over 2 weeks. It spread out, but it was only 5. And that was amazing. I was really lucky, I think. And some people have a lot more, and that's a bit more intrusive in their lifestyle, isn't it? But again, like you say, and I think it's really important, you don't feel it when it's happening at all. You don't feel anything, do you? So that's good to know. So again, how can people, when they know they're going for their radiotherapy, what would you suggest for people to do to prepare? Are they preparing their skin in any way? Are they preparing their body? Is there anything you can think of that they can do to help themselves get ready?
I would say to have some rest beforehand, drink plenty of water, lead a healthy lifestyle as possible. I know it all sounds really boring, but and just on before the actual day, just plan, take some extra time. The first day will take longer because we're all doing loads of checks on your treatment plan and your setup, and then there's some little x-rays that are taken on you by the machine before it starts to make sure you're still in the right place and you're still matching up to where you're supposed to be. So just be prepared for a slightly longer day. In terms of other sort of prep, you really don't need to. I think some of the like we were saying before we started recording about skincare and things, and how especially for breast ladies, because it is quite sore on the skin, to be careful of what you put on them. It wouldn't hurt maybe before treatment starts to wean yourself off your perfumes or your deodorants and maybe some products that have got slightly harsher chemicals in, and start
Mm,
getting used to using the creams they recommend,
mm.
just so that your habit is already there.
Yeah, that's a really good point, isn't it? Hydration, big time. Keep hydrated all through it. We need that for so many reasons, but definitely while you're going through radiotherapy, keep hydrated. And for me personally, because it wasn't long after surgery, I was actually using quite a lot of oils and essential oils for the scarring. And I was told not to change to, I was given a tube of some kind of gel. I'm not sure what it was. I don't know technically, and told to use that, which I did. I did what I was told, basically use that, not using my essential oil blends. Like you say, that's perfumey, isn't it? That kind of thing. So I think that was good advice. So again, ask your team, what can I do to prepare? They might have something else to give you advice wise, or they might give you a cream, or they might suggest something specific, because there are certain creams, aren't there, that maybe you can use and some that you can't use. So, and I think I wanted to moisturize my skin. I thought that made sense to me to moisturize. So whatever the gel that they gave me, it was a little bit cooling, it felt, which I thought was nice, although I didn't feel any burning sensation, but in my mind that helped a little bit. And I just thought, I'm looking after myself the way that they've suggested. So I liked that. I liked following their guidance. So again, ask them, because every team might have something different that they can help you with. And again, I would say, if you're feeling nervous as well, tell them, because they do understand, obviously. And I'm sure when you were dealing with people, they're going to be a little bit nervous. But if you pretend you're okay and you're not, it's a bit silly, isn't it? You might as well just say, I'm really nervous, and then they can reassure you and they can help you and everything. Because when you actually have the radiotherapy, you're in the room alone, aren't you? When you're having your the machine is actually
Yeah.
working. So I found it really strange, because I'd come from chemotherapy where there's so many people around you, everything's buzzing and you can see everything and you can hear everything and whatever. And then I was in this position where, and the room was a bit cold. I think it has to be cold, doesn't it? And that's okay. So be prepared for that if needs be, if you feel a bit cold on your hands and feet, that kind of thing. It was a bit dark, and then I was left alone. And I thought, oh, there was a bit of me. The first time the prep was different, like you say, everyone's buzzing around you and helping you. But the first time I was left alone for that first session, I had a little bit of a mini panic attack, but be honest, just because it felt so, I don't know why, but I wasn't expecting it. And I had this a big waft of like, oh my God, I'm alone. I was a little bit scared. I've got my breathing techniques, and this is like you mentioned earlier, preparing yourself to cope with those kind of things. I was very surprised that the emotions that hit me at that moment, and then this machine going, and I was scared. So it was, and then focusing on the breathing and everything really, really helped me. And then it was over, which was fine. So that first time was, as I say, I really was surprised at how the emotions hit me in a way that I wasn't expecting. So do you think that's quite common for people, or do you think that's just me?
Yeah, it is. And it's a bit of a shame, really, because I think although you go for your planning scan and you say to patients how the treatment's going to work, you don't really, nothing can really prepare them for what it's like. I mean, you're right, it is cold in there. It's not necessarily so much the room needs to be cold. The machine itself is very temperature regulated.
Yeah.
But the room's probably only cold because it's surrounded by 6 meters of lead to
Yes.
stop
Yes.
the radiation escaping the room. So it is dark in there and a bit cold. It's dark because there's obviously no windows. And then we use lasers to align you to whether or not you've got a tattoo or to markers on
Yeah.
your skin for your treatment. That's the only reason why it's dark. There's no reason to say to your radiographers, like, once I'm set up, please can you turn the lights back on so that I'm scared of the dark, or it will help my anxiety,
Good point.
because
Yeah.
whether or not there's lights on should have no bearing on your treatment.
That's a good point. Yeah.
We do have to go out of the room for your treatment, obviously, to protect ourselves from radiation, but we are looking at the patient on a camera the entire time.
Yeah.
There's microphones in the room as
Yes.
well, so we can
Yes.
speak to you.
Yes.
You can ask for music if you've got your own playlist. You can have your own music playing to help relax you as well. Um, and it is a bloody big machine, pardon my language.
No, you're absolutely right.
It's
It's
something that no
enormous.
one's really ever seen before in their lives. So
Yeah.
it can, by the first time the thing's moving over you, especially if it's going quite close to your head,
Yeah.
it is scary.
Yes. Yeah. So that
Um,
again is something to maybe be prepared for, because I did have that. Oh,
yeah.
what's
I'd
going
maybe
on?
watch some YouTube videos of how one works to
Yes.
just familiarize yourself with it moving.
Yeah.
But if you've ever got time in between appointments, I know sometimes, like, the time, it feels like you're being really rushed because the appointments are very small. But ask to see the machine move in the daylight, or that with the
Mm.
lights on, because it's under the radiographer's control the entire time. So even though
Mm.
they're not in the room, all of a sudden the collimator leaves are going shh, and you think, oh my God, what's that?
Yeah.
It's under control by at least two radiographers the other side of the wall.
Yeah, I think that's really valuable to know, that you can actually say, like, can you put the lights on? Can you do? And also to remember, yes, they are quick appointments, and you might feel you're taking up valuable time, but you can ask your questions, can't you? You can just check something. So again, letting people know that they can do that, and people are happy to help, aren't they? So I think that really helps, because it is a big machine, and there's noise. So yeah, you can maybe have some music, or I was doing my own breathing techniques and taking myself off to my lovely happy place, which works. But as I say, I had this initial whack of, oh well, which I wasn't expecting. So again, not to scare anyone, but just know that it might feel a bit strange. And you mentioned there, you said the word tattoo there, and just to pick up on that point, this is something that sometimes for the markers, isn't it, when they measure you up on that planning appointment, sometimes you have a little tattoo, a little spot, isn't it, that so
Yeah,
that they
it's a
know
tiny
exactly
little
where that,
spot
yeah,
just to help line you up to the
yeah,
lasers, and then the all the other technical stuff
yeah,
that happens with your
that's
plan and setup. But it's just like a lining up point, for
yeah,
layman's terms.
that's right. Just I thought sort of mention it as you mentioned the word tattoo, and we hadn't talked about that before, because people might go, "Oh, what's that all about?" So it's just a little marker. I had something that wasn't permanent, but it worked for what they needed. So that was really good. So that's the specifics of the measuring up, isn't it, that they do, and how they really get the spot, don't they, and only the spot. So that really helps. Um, I've heard the term so many times that radiotherapy is the gift that keeps on giving. And I sort of don't really know what that means. Is it because, like you said earlier, that you have your fractions, and then afterwards it still is doing its work? Is that Is that what that means, or have I got that
I've
completely?
never heard that phrase before in my life.
Oh, well, there you go. There you go. I've said something to you that I've heard so many
I
times. So,
suppose so. Yeah, I mean that's definitely one way you could look at it, in that it does carry on working for a good couple of weeks after your treatment ends.
mm,
So that might be why you still feel tired, or your skin might
yeah,
get a bit worse before it gets better,
yeah,
because it is still working and having an effect on you. Maybe sort of like in scientific physics terms, you're never going to run out of photons. They're created in the machine and they get expelled into the patient and then they dissipate, but
mm.
it's not like a bottle of chemotherapy that runs out and then more has to be made. It's in that regard, but maybe I'm getting a bit too scientific in.
Did I look like I glazed over a bit then?
Yeah, physics.
But it is, but it is something that I think, and again, I think there's a bit, and maybe this is what I was getting the meaning of this. I don't know, that actually it is something that it is used sometimes, and correct me again if I'm wrong, that to actually where you've had maybe your surgery and your chemotherapy, and the tumor has gone as such, it's to make sure that it doesn't come back again. Is that because it changes the cells? Is that am I
It's
got that
kind
right
of
or
so
not?
it's to get rid of any microscopic cancer cells that might still remain. So although the tumor itself has gone, there might be some microscopic cells within the tumor bed which have
Right.
escaped that you can't obviously see when you're doing surgery. And then things like some people have their lymph nodes targeted as
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
in case some cancer cells have traveled to the most common lymph nodes. So I'm going here like you're a
Yeah,
breast
because
lady,
that's
then
what, yeah,
that
that's
would
what
be
I
an
had.
area
Yeah,
where it might get targeted if there was
yeah,
any doubt that there had been
yeah,
some travel of cells.
yeah. So they would, and again, that's specific to each person, isn't it? But I had that. I had it in both places. So, so that's a good point that we brought up, isn't it? So that is, it's really good. Now, I had some specific questions. So if you're okay answering them from people, and I'm not going to mention who has actually asked them because I forgot to ask their permission. So they're just general questions, but they were specifically from people. So we've covered the one I think about can we work, can we exercise, how we can go. And exercise, I think, is quite important, isn't it? So we don't stiffen up. Am I right in thinking that, gentle
Yeah,
exercise?
I would sort of like, I wouldn't necessarily take up dodgeball or something like that, but I think, same as if you go through pregnancy, you would do what your body is already used to.
Yeah,
So if you were a runner, then there's no reason to say you staying within, within your comfort zone, you can't go for a gentle jog, or,
yeah,
I ride horses, so I would like to think that I could still ride for,
would
for
you?
anything
Yeah,
of my mental health more than my
yeah,
physical health.
yeah.
So we wouldn't be the ones to say, no, you've got to stop doing what you're doing, but just do what
Mm,
feels comfortable to you, and
yeah.
again, listen to your body. So
Yeah, yeah, I think that's really important, isn't it? And like you say, it's good for your mental health too, isn't it? To not feel that you can't do things. And I was, as I say, my radiotherapy came not long after my surgery. So I was already doing the exercises for after surgery as well. So I kept doing those because again, being in that position while I was there, not for long, I was a little bit uncomfortable. So moving and getting that, it was that shoulder and that arm moving as much as anything. So like you say, keep going, listen to your body, do gentle exercise that you're used to. Don't start anything new. So that's really good. Now, the other thing that I've been asked as well is, what about protecting your heart? Will it zap your heart? Will it zap your liver? Because how close is it? And I think we sort of answered that in the way that it's really specific, the areas, isn't it? But can you again reassure people how that would work?
yeah, absolutely. So I think I touched base on the planned target volume. So say for example, I don't know if anyone's like just listening rather than watching this, you've got like a little um cupful, when you if you put your hands together, this is the area that you want to treat, but then maybe your heart is to the side of that. There's things called the collimators, which are essentially lead blocks in the treatment, so they can come into the field of treatment and block it out, so your heart is out the way.
Mm,
There's also now a lot of the breathing techniques that I think you went through,
mm,
where
yeah.
certain phases of your breath the machine cuts out. So if, for example, if you're taking an in breath and that lifts your heart out of the way of the treatment area, that will then turn on the machine and treat the area then. And then when you like exhale, then the machine will cut out. So there's lots of different ways it can be done. There's very complicated things called wedges, which are essentially, in the olden days, it would have literally looked like a slab of cheese that would have gone into the machine, and that would have essentially sort of bent, in layman's terms, the beam, and so that would again block out some of the radiation from, say, for example, the rectum or the bladder if it was a pelvis patient. So it's very, very clever. And once you've had your planning scan, that scan then goes to the planning radiographers, and it's a whole room full of people looking at computers, writing your plan, doing sort of like mock-ups of, if I put this beam at this angle, how much is that going to affect the heart, or how much is that going to affect the bladder? And so you can do all of these scenarios, and it will flash red if they think that there's too much in the wrong place, and then it will be green if they're happy with it. And then that gets signed off by two radiographers, and then that goes to the oncologist and has to get signed off by the oncologist as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
So many people check that this plan is best for this patient and is going to protect those other organs.
Yeah, yeah, amazing. I think that's so reassuring. And thank you for the person that sent that question in. And you're right, you alluded to, I had this breathing, I was sort of asked to practice this breathing technique. A lot of my work is about breathing techniques anyway, so that really fitted with me. But I was amazed that, that to take a breath in, you're moving I think it was my heart and my liver, and then you breathe out and it goes back to where it was. But the machine knows, doesn't it? So I couldn't get it wrong. Although I was worried, oh my God, I've got to do my breathing right. I didn't need to worry because the machine knows. It's cleverer than I am, which is great. And like you say, it's all specifically set up. So hopefully that will reassure you who asked that question, that, it's not going to damage your heart. The other thing as well I'd like to say is I was having regular echocardiograms to check my heart for the chemotherapy and everything. I had them towards the end of my treatment too, to see as well, and I remember getting the letter to say no damage has been done. And I was so, so pleased. So we are monitored, aren't we? And we're looked after so well, because there is, I think that's probably more to do with the chemotherapy with the heart, than the radiotherapy. But it's a good question to ask, because we're being zapped, to sort of think, is it going to hit something that we don't want it to? But you've explained that beautifully. So thank you for that. Now, the other thing I was asked about, someone who has said that they're going to have their radiotherapy and they need to have an enema before their treatment. And now that's not a breast cancer. I think that's a bowel cancer, the lady who's asked me that. So again, can you explain why that might be the case, why they would be asked to do that?
That is for consistency with the shape of your pelvis for every single treatment. So you would have probably been asked to have an enema so that you have an empty bowel for your planning scan and you're measuring up. And then that's kind of like a benchmark, so that every time you go for treatment, your bowel is in the same state as it was when you were planned. And again, what that does is it makes sure that no other organs are coming in the treatment field. So if, for example, you've got a full bowel, and that might distend some of your intestines or your bladder or something like that, and then that could then get in the way of your treatment and cause a bit of damage to it. So if everybody, the treatment is planned around you having an empty bowel, then you'll be asked to come with an empty bowel every day for
Yeah.
consistency and to
Yeah.
protect your other organs.
Yeah, and I think that's a really valid point, isn't it? The setup, the planning, they want you to be in exactly the same position. It's like, it probably wouldn't happen, but if someone, say, lost a lot of weight suddenly or something, you're not going to be in the same place, are you? So it's those kind of things. They want that consistency from that planning.
Yeah,
Don't
exactly.
they? So that makes perfect sense to me. And personally, I had a seroma after my surgery. That, if people don't know, the fluid builds up and it's a bit lumpy, isn't it? And they waited for that to go down a bit, so that, again, for that consistency. So it was a question of like, well, that's actually, we don't want to do the setup and plan and the markers and everything while that lump is there, that might go down. So,
Yeah.
and I understood that, they explained that to me, and that made sense. And again, a seroma, that kind of thing, is quite common, isn't it, after surgery? And that leads me beautifully on to one of the other questions that I've had about having a edema. Have I said that right? Which
Yeah.
is, if you can explain what that is, because it's not the same as a seroma, is it? What is an edema?
It's fluid buildup, particularly lymphatic fluid, which can happen at any time after surgery or during or after radiotherapy, particularly if the lymph nodes have been treated as well. And it can just cause a bit of a lump and a bit of pain and a bit of discomfort. But again, that can be monitored, and if it's getting too bad, maybe it might require drainage, or maybe it
Yeah.
might require a break in treatment until it goes down.
Yeah.
But obviously point it out to the radiographers. They've probably noticed it anyway, but if this is different, this is new.
Yeah, it's not normal. Yeah, yeah. So that again is a very good point. And you said then, that can come at any point. I had a seroma after my first surgery almost immediately. But after my second surgery, I had the swelling build up quite a few months later, actually, and I was really surprised. But it can happen at any point, and I think a lot of it is to do with how your lymphatic system works and how you drain naturally, isn't it? So, and like you say, especially if you've had lymph nodes removed or anything in that way, it does affect your lymphatic system, doesn't it? So, and just a little nod to, I'm going to be having a little conversation like this with a lady that helped me with lymphatic drainage and what to do about that. So that will be coming. That's another topic, isn't it? So, but there's a lot we can do to help ourselves with that, isn't there? If we get any swelling or
Yeah, definitely. And
yeah.
again, drinking lots of water
Yes,
helps shift
yes,
your lymphatic drainage, and
yeah,
carrying on with the exercises, even if you're, not been specifically told to, there's no harm in continuing your arm exercises to
yeah,
help shift fluid. So that would all help.
yeah, definitely. So I hope that's answered that question beautifully for the person that asked it. And it really is a bit about, we've talked a lot, haven't we, about what we can do to help ourselves and what we can do. What do we need to do when we've had our radiotherapy? Is there anything specific to do after we've had our radiotherapy when it's finished? What would you think people need to do?
Again, it depends on the type of treatment you had and where you had it. For example, with breast ladies, you really ought to be careful in the sun forever going forward,
Yeah,
particularly in the short term, like the first 6 weeks after your treatment. And, the rules are stay out the sun if you can, but if you absolutely have to go out in the sun, wear a high factor sun cream, cover up everything, wear a hat.
yeah,
And that is to protect your skin, because your skin is going to be more susceptible to sun
yeah,
damage
yeah,
for a long time.
mm,
But over time it doesn't get as severe, but we would always say you've just got to be more careful in the sun than you would
yeah,
have previously been.
yeah,
For people, maybe if you've had like a head and neck cancer, so sort of like pharynx, larynx, or in the mouth, they're monitored a lot more closely by the oncology team for a bit longer, because obviously they get a lot of weight loss. If they're struggling to eat, they might have to be on meal replacement drinks,
yeah,
building up energy again, building up strength. So you're not just kind of like thrown out the door after your last treatment. You will have a follow-up appointment. There will be a telephone number to get hold of someone at the
yeah,
oncology team whenever, if any questions arise or a new side effect starts after your last treatment. You think, oh, I've got no one to speak to. You're never really alone. So
yeah, yeah. I love that, because it is, again, sometimes you do think, oh, that's it, treatment's finished, but the people, your team, are always there for you, aren't they? And again, to remind people that they can get in touch and ask questions. But I think that what really sang out to me there, that advice, the same old thing, listen to your body, be kind to yourself, do what you need to do. I was big on the moisturizing as soon as I was allowed to go back to my oils and everything. That as well was a bit of massage, which helped as well with the lymphatic drainage. So I felt that was really important for me personally. But it's looking after yourself, isn't it? And just, knowing that you've been through something, that just keep an eye on what you feel like, and give yourself a break when you need one, if you need one, and keep that exercise going, and hydration all the time, isn't it? Drink water, drink water. So that's good. Now, we're both very much, people don't know about you so much, but obviously I'd like you to tell people, we've mentioned about the mindset, mindset, how you feel about things, positivity, if you like, or however you deal with your emotions, helps so much, doesn't it, in any kind of treatment, when even from diagnosis time, so you're trained in NLP, is that right?
yeah, that's right.
NLP practitioner. So could you just briefly let people know what that is, if they don't know what that is?
NLP stands for quite a mouthful, which is neuro linguistic programming, and it's basically understanding your mind and making it work for you better, rather than fighting against demons like imposter
Yeah,
syndrome or
yeah,
coming from a place of lack. It's reframing your thoughts and
yeah.
forming better habits with
Mm.
yourself.
Yeah, brilliant. That's good. And that's something you do. So that's something, if people wanted to get in touch with you and find out a bit more, they could you? I'm going to put, when I put this up on my YouTube, I'm going to put all your contact details as well. So would you like to just say where people can find you and look at what you do?
Yeah, of course. So my website is harrietwallace.com, but I hang out on Facebook quite a lot where my business name is just Harriet Wallace. So you can drop me a message on there to talk about anything to do with mindset in life or business.
Lovely, lovely. And people know about me. I'm all about like relaxing, de-stressing, lots of tips and coping strategies I can help people with. Help with breathing. We talked about breathing techniques while we're actually having the radiotherapy treatment, as we worry about it when we might not be able to sleep before we go in for treatment. I can help with all of that. So all the details, you can get in touch with either of us if you've got any more questions. And I think, we might catch up again, mightn't we, and have another little session answering questions. So if you've got anything you want to know or you want to ask Harry or myself, then please do, because we're both happy to help, aren't we? But I think I can't stress enough, if we can actually look at our mindset, it's mind, body, and soul, isn't it? All connected all the time. And it really, really helps with how you cope with a diagnosis, how you navigate your way through your treatment, and how you recover. I think, would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, so we can do a lot for ourselves, can't we? So thank you so much for helping with this and your time and your expertise. I know this will have helped a lot of people. I'm really glad that we've done this. And as I say, we might do it again, mightn't we? Thank you.
That'd be lovely. I could talk about it all day.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.